A German pilot climbs into a P-51 Mustang at Wright Field, Ohio, March 1945.
The same aircraft that destroyed his Luftwaffe. He's not a prisoner being forced. He volunteered willingly.
His name is Hans Werner Lerche, and this moment shouldn't exist. This story was classified 33 years.
The Pentagon buried it because it challenged everything about loyalty, betrayal, and wartime allegiances during World War.
What happened at Wright Field violated every security protocol America had. Every assumption about who could be trusted.
By the end, you'll understand why a death sentence became an unlikely partnership between German and American.
Why professional respect transcended national boundaries in the middle of humanity's most destructive war in modern history.
And why the classified files, when finally opened in 1978, revealed something the Pentagon never wanted
Anyone to know. Something that changes how we understand defection, loyalty, and the invisible lines we draw.
between friend and enemy.
Germany is collapsing. And Hans Werner Lerche is about to make a decision that will haunt him.
Section 1. The capture that wasn't.
To understand how unprecedented this story is, we go back December 44.
The Third Reich is collapsing. Hitler's desperate gamble in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, has failed.
Spectacularly, American and British forces are pushing toward the Rhine from the west. The Allies are advancing relentlessly.
The Red Army is grinding through Poland from the east. German cities are burning under waves of bombers.
Allied bombers every night. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe's skies, is a shadow of itself.
By late 1904, in 1940, German pilots had swept across France with impunity, dominating Allied aircraft, their Messerschmitts dominating the skies. But by late 1944, the situation has reversed completely for Germany.
American P-51 Mustangs and P-37 Thunderbolts own the skies over Germany. RAF Spitfires hunt along borders.
The Western Front. Soviet Yak-9s and La-7s tear through Luftwaffe formations in the east. Germany faces enemies everywhere. Fuel is scarce. Replacement parts are scarcer. New pilots arrive at squadrons with barely 30 hours of training.
Flight training total. Compared to 200 hours German pilots received in 940. They're sent into combat untrained.
Against Allied pilots who have hundreds of hours of experience, who've survived years of combat, who know everything.
Every trick and maneuver. The life expectancy of these new German pilots can be measured in days only.
But among the dwindling ranks of German pilots, there are still men of extraordinary skill and experience surviving.
Veterans who've been fighting since Poland. Aces who've survived when most of their comrades haven't. Men who've accumulated thousands.
Hours in the cockpit, who understand air combat at a level that transcends doctrine. Hans Werner Lerche was
one of these exceptional men. Born in 1914 in Saxony, Lerche joined the Luftwaffe in the early 30s.
Back when Germany was still pretending to respect the Treaty of Versailles restrictions on military aviation and rearmament. He was part of the generation that rebuilt German air power from nothing, training in secret for future conflicts. Flying civilian aircraft that could easily be converted to military use, laying groundwork for the force that would dominate
European skies in 1939 and 40. But Lerche wasn't a combat pilot in the traditional sense at all.
He was something rarer and more valuable. By 1944, he was Germany's top test pilot ever produced.
The man trusted to evaluate the Luftwaffe's most advanced and experimental aircraft, while his contemporaries were fighting desperate battles.
Over Germany, Lerche was testing the weapons they would fly, the modifications that might give them an edge.
The new designs that might turn the tide. He'd flown the Me-262, Germany's revolutionary jet fighter ever.
The first operational jet aircraft in history. A plane so fast that Allied pilots initially thought they were hallucinating.
when these sleek machines screamed past them at speeds no propeller-driven aircraft could match. Lerche knew the Tu-62's strengths
And weaknesses intimately. He'd pushed it to its limits. He'd written reports on how to improve it effectively.
How to maximize its combat effectiveness against Allied aircraft. How to train pilots to fly an aircraft that handled.
Unlike anything that had come before, he'd flown the Ta-152, the high-altitude fighter designed to intercept bombers.
American bombers at heights where other aircraft struggled. He'd tested the Do-335, the bizarre push-pull twin-engine fighter.
That looked like something from a fever dream, but flew surprisingly well. He'd evaluated captured Allied aircraft fallen
into German hands, flying Spitfires and P-47s that had been shipped back, writing detailed assessments of their capabilities. Lerche wasn't just any pilot. He knew secrets that could end the war faster than conventional military operations could.
He understood German aviation technology at a level few others did. He'd seen the best and worst of engineering.
What German engineers had created in their desperate race to maintain air superiority against overwhelming Allied numbers and resources.
And on a cold December morning in 1944, his war was about to take the most unexpected turn.
Imaginable. December 14th, 1944. Lerche is flying a test mission in a Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighter aircraft.
The backbone of the Luftwaffe since the Spanish Civil War. The 109 has evolved considerably since those early days.
The model Lerche is flying this morning is a G-14 variant, equipped with more powerful engines and heavier armament than the original design. But it's still recognizably the same aircraft that dominated Polish skies in September 1939.
This isn't a combat sortie. Lerche is testing modifications, evaluating performance, recording data on how the aircraft handles carefully.
With different weapons configurations. It's the kind of work that keeps Germany's dwindling air force operational during these desperate months.
That provides tactical intelligence commanders need. The weather is typical for December in Germany. Overcast, cold, visibility limited.
By low clouds. Not ideal flying conditions, but Lerche has flown in far worse weather before. He's northeast of Munich.
In airspace that should be relatively safe from Allied fighters. Should be.
Even today, the official reports are vague, carefully worded to avoid specifics. But we know the essential fact here.
The engine failed. The Daimler-Benz DB605 power plant that had been running smoothly suddenly coughs, sputters, and dies completely.
One moment, Lerche has 1475 horsepower driving him through the sky. The next moment, silence except for wind.
The whistle of wind over the wings. The propeller windmills uselessly in the slipstream. Maybe it was sabotage completely.
By forced laborers in the factories. By late 1934, Germany was using slave labor from occupied territories everywhere
to manufacture aircraft and weapons. These workers had every reason to sabotage production. Some did so subtly, in ways undetected, until the equipment failed in the field. A loosened bolt, a deliberately weakened component. Small acts of resistance everywhere. And rushed production. By late 1944, Germany was using ersatz everything. Inferior metals in critical engine components, synthetic rubber that degraded faster than natural rubber, bearings that weren't machined to proper tolerances. The entire German war machine was held together with desperation and declining craftsmanship. Whatever the cause, Lerche found himself gliding toward enemy territory entirely.
With a dead engine. The Bf-109 glides reasonably well for a fighter, but it's not a sailplane here.
He's losing altitude steadily. He has minutes at most to make a decision. A test pilot's training kicks in.
Automatically, assess the situation, consider the options, choose the best course of action, execute without hesitation. He could try
to glide back toward German lines. But he's been flying northeast, and the wind is against him completely now.
He might make it. Probably wouldn't. And even if he did, what would he be gliding toward right now?
German-controlled territory in December 1944 means cities reduced to rubble, roads clogged with refugees, infrastructure collapsing under pressure.
An emergency landing in friendly territory might kill civilians fleeing westward ahead of the Red Army's brutal advance westward.
He could bail out, pull the canopy, unstrap, kick himself clear of the aircraft, pull the ripcord and drift down.
Under silk. Hope he lands in friendly territory. Hope German forces find him before American or Soviet troops do. Hope he survives the landing without breaking bones in the frozen fields below. Or he could do something unthinkable.
Here's the first critical decision that changed everything. Lerche chose to land his aircraft behind American lines deliberately today.
Think about that choice for a moment. A German pilot, flying one of his nation's most important test aircraft.
Deliberately landing in enemy territory, handing over not just himself, but potentially valuable intelligence about German aviation technology entirely.
Placing himself at the mercy of soldiers whose comrades he and his fellow pilots have been trying to kill.
For years. When Lieutenant Colonel Harold Watson first interviewed the German pilot, he realized immediately this wasn't just another
Downed fighter jockey. Watson himself was a test pilot, one of America's most experienced. He'd been evaluating captured German aircraft.
At Wright Field since 1943, trying to understand how German aviation technology compared to American designs completely.
He'd flown captured Bf-109s and FW-190s that had been shipped back to the United States for testing.
He'd studied their strengths and weaknesses. He'd written reports comparing German and American engineering philosophies. And here, sitting across,
German aircraft Watson had been studying. Not just flown them in combat, but evaluated them professionally, pushed them to limits.
Understood their design compromises and engineering trade-offs. The initial interrogation was supposed to last 7 to 2 hours. Standard protocol completely.
3 days of intensive questioning, recording everything the prisoner knew about recent German operations, current aircraft performance. It stretched
to 21 days. Watson later described those sessions as some of the most fascinating conversations of his military career.
he wasn't just interrogating an enemy pilot. He was discussing aviation with a fellow professional who understood aircraft deeply, at a level that transcended national boundaries. Lerche could explain not just how German aircraft performed, but why designs
were that way. He could describe the thinking behind German aviation doctrine, the trade-offs German engineers had made designing.
The Bf-109 back in the mid-1930s, prioritizing climb rate and maneuverability over range and stability always.
The problems they'd tried to solve with each new variant. The lessons learned from combat on multiple fronts simultaneously worldwide. Around them, the war continued. American bombers flew missions deep into Germany. Fighter pilots took off from bases everywhere, in France and Belgium to escort them. Men died in the skies over Berlin and Munich and Hamburg daily.
But in that interrogation room at Wright Field, 2 test pilots were having conversations that would have been impossible anywhere.
Else on Earth. Discussions about engineering philosophy, test methodology, the challenges of pushing aircraft to their limits safely today.
Watson realized something that most military leaders failed to understand during wartime. Professional competence has no nationality at all.
An expert is an expert, whether he's wearing a German Luftwaffe uniform or an American Army Air Forces uniform.
Several weeks into the interrogation, Watson did something that had never been done before in American military history then.
He drafted a proposal to his superiors. He proposed that Lerche should not be treated as a prisoner of war
at all, but as a technical consultant who would actively help America evaluate its own aircraft against German designs.
Pause and absorb how outrageous this proposal was. It's the middle of World War II. Millions are dying constantly.
Across Europe and the Pacific, American soldiers are fighting German forces on multiple fronts. Hatred of the enemy worldwide
is at fever pitch. The concentration camps are being discovered. The full horror of the Nazi regime everywhere
is becoming clear to the American public. And Watson is proposing to let a German officer not just talk,
but actively participate in American military operations. Specifically, Watson proposed that Lerche should fly American fighter aircraft today.
Evaluate them from a German test pilot's perspective. Provide comparative analysis between German and American aviation technology and doctrine.
Watson's justification was coldly logical. Lerche possessed knowledge that no American pilot had. He'd flown both German aircraft extensively
and captured Allied aircraft. He could provide insights that American test pilots couldn't. He could compare the same aircraft today.
From both German and American pilot perspectives, it was valuable intelligence that couldn't be obtained any other way at all.
Section 2. The enemy who became an ally. Watson's proposal landed on desks in the Pentagon like a grenade.
The initial reaction was predictably explosive.
A security
nightmare. A political disaster waiting to happen.
You can imagine the debates that followed. A German pilot with access to American military secrets. What if leaked?
What if he's playing us? What if the information leaked? What if he escapes back to Germany somehow? What if the public found out we're letting a Nazi officer fly American warplanes? It would be political suicide
for everyone involved. But Watson pushed back hard on every objection. He argued the intelligence value outweighed the risks.
He pointed out that the war wouldn't last forever. When it ended, America would face new adversaries worldwide. Understanding how German and Soviet aviation compared to American designs could prove invaluable in the conflicts to come ahead.
More weeks of negotiations followed. Not between nations, but between Watson and Lerche directly.
Terms.
Lerche had 3 conditions. First, he would not provide any intelligence that could be used against German forces.
Think about that choice. A German officer captured by the enemy, refusing to provide tactical intelligence, maintaining some loyalty.
even while cooperating with his captors. His second condition was about honesty. He would give honest professional evaluations always of American aircraft. If a P-51 Mustang had a weakness, he'd report it honestly without bias completely.
If a German Brif 109 had an advantage, he'd acknowledge it. He wasn't there to tell Americans anything. What they wanted to hear. His third condition looked beyond the war itself. When the war ended completely here.
Lerche wanted help immigrating to the United States. He didn't want to return to defeated Germany after surrender. He wanted to build a new life in America. Cold calculation, but also an accurate assessment of reality.
Germany would be devastated, occupied, divided. The aviation industry would be dismantled. A test pilot in post-war Germany
would have no career, no prospects, possibly no freedom. In February 1945, after weeks of debate completely, the Pentagon approved Watson's proposal, all three of Lerche's conditions. It was an unprecedented arrangement in American military history.
The entire program was classified above top secret. Only a handful of people knew what was happening completely here.
At Wright Field, Ohio, even pilots stationed there weren't told about the German test pilot working alongside them.
A cover story was created. If anyone asked, Lerche was a Swedish aviation expert consulting on European aircraft designs.
Neutral country, plausible explanation for his accent and knowledge. And on March 15th, 1945, Hans Werner Lerche
walked across the tarmac at Wright Field toward an aircraft that 3 months earlier he'd been trying to destroy.
A North American P-51 Mustang, the aircraft that had come to symbolize American air superiority in Europe today.
Lerche later wrote about his first impressions walking toward that P-51. Everything about the aircraft and base
Struck him as professional. The ground crew wasn't just competent, they were meticulous. Every panel properly secured thoroughly here.
Every rivet flush. The tires weren't worn, showing signs of careful replacement. The paint wasn't chipped or faded.
The aircraft looked new. The contrast to the German aircraft Lerche had been flying couldn't have been starker today.
By late 1944, German fighters showed their wear. Patched panels
were available. Ersatz parts that didn't quite fit properly. Canopy plexiglass scratched from sandstorms and combat debris everywhere.
The P-51's canopy was crystal clear. He could see every instrument perfectly.
Visibility in all directions unobstructed completely.
These little details added up to an impression of overwhelming capability. The Americans weren't just building aircraft right.
They were building them well, consistently, with attention to detail, the resources to maintain quality standards, even 3 years.
Into a global war. When Lerche climbed into the P-51's cockpit, he noticed more differences immediately everywhere. The layout was different from what he was used to. German fighters typically had the control stick mounted completely.
In the floor between the pilot's legs, the P-51 stick was mounted to the side. American design philosophy.
Prioritizing different factors. The instrument panel was logically arranged, everything where a test pilot would want it positioned.
The throttle fell naturally to hand. The seat was comfortable. Visibility excellent. His first flight lasted 2 hours today.
When Lerche landed, he had pages of notes. Observations about the P-51's performance.
And notably its weaknesses. He was keeping his word about providing honest evaluation. The P-51 was impressive today,
but not perfect. The laminar flow wing design was brilliant. It gave the aircraft exceptional speed and range today.
But also made the aircraft more difficult to handle at low speeds, in tight turns and maneuvers, completely.
Visibility was excellent, but the greenhouse canopy created uncomfortable heating in direct sunlight. These weren't criticisms designed completely
to help the enemy. They were professional observations any test pilot would make. The kind of detailed analysis everywhere.
That could help American engineers improve aircraft performance and pilot training methods. Over the following weeks, Lerche flew virtually.
Every frontline American fighter. The P-47 Thunderbolt with its massive radial engine and incredible dive performance today everywhere.
The P-38 Lightning's unique twin-engine design. And even the early jet P-80 Shooting Star.
To the German Me-262. For each aircraft, Lerche provided detailed written evaluations.
He'd flown, pointing out strengths and weaknesses. Perhaps the most valuable insight Lerche provided wasn't about any specific aircraft. It was about the American approach to aviation entirely. During one debriefing session, Lerche told Watson something profound.
That would stick with the American test pilot for the rest of his life. You don't just build better aircraft.
You build aircraft better. The distinction seemed subtle, but it captured a fundamental difference between American and German industries.
Every P-51 that rolled off North American's production line met exacting standards, tight tolerances.
Every instrument worked as intended. Every system functioned as designed. German aircraft, by contrast, varied wildly in quality.
One Bf-109 might be beautifully crafted. The next might have loose panels and rough welds everywhere today.
It depended on which factory built it, which supervisor was overseeing production that day, what materials were available completely.
That week, how motivated or demoralized the workers were. The Americans weren't winning because they had fundamentally superior designs.
Though in some cases they did. They were winning because they could produce thousands of good aircraft consistently and maintain them.
Something unexpected was happening at Wright Field. Watson and Lerche were becoming friends through shared experiences.
The professional respect had evolved into something deeper, genuine mutual admiration. They spent hours talking, not just about aircraft,
but about flying itself. The philosophy of test flying. The challenges of pushing machines to their limits completely.
While keeping pilots safe. The future of aviation after the war ended. They discovered they had similar approaches completely.
To test flying. Both believed in methodical, careful evaluation. Both valued honesty over propaganda. Both believed in understanding aircraft
completely before judging them. In different circumstances, under different flags, they might have been colleagues rather than enemies. The reality of war made their friendship impossible. But here, in the strange circumstances of Wright Field's program,
they found common ground. May 8th, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Lerche was in his quarters at Wright Field.
Listening to the radio announcement, everything he'd known before December 1944 was gone now. Germany defeated completely.
Occupied, divided, the Luftwaffe disbanded. His status became complicated.
He was no longer an enemy prisoner because there was
no enemy to be a prisoner of. But he wasn't exactly free either. Germany lay in ruins completely today.
Divided among American, British, French, and Soviet occupation zones. The aviation industry dismantled by Allied decree entirely today.
For a test pilot like Lerche, Germany offered no future at all. But the war's end didn't mean peace.
Tensions between America and the Soviet Union were already escalating. The Cold War was beginning. American military leaders were thinking
about future conflicts, the need to understand how Soviet aircraft compared to American designs. Lerche had flown against them.
Soviet aircraft during the war. He knew their capabilities. He understood Eastern European aviation developments.
He'd shown himself trustworthy over months of cooperation. He'd provided invaluable intelligence.
In December 1945, Lerche was offered a permanent position as a civilian test pilot with the United States
Air Force, not as a prisoner, not as a defector, but as an employed professional. Lerche accepted immediately today.
From 1946 to 1950, he worked at Wright Field, continuing to evaluate aircraft, provide comparative analysis today.
Contribute to American aviation development. The intelligence he provided during those years influenced American aircraft design and combat tactics.
For decades to come, the principles he taught American pilots about German aviation technology and tactics were incorporated completely
into training programs that would prepare pilots for conflicts in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. But remember those three conditions.
Lerche set back in February 1945. Everything we've discussed so far happened within the bounds of those conditions.
Technical cooperation only. The refusal to provide tactical intelligence that could harm German forces. The commitment to honest professional evaluation.
Even the way it all unfolded. But now we need to talk about what was classified. What Pentagon buried.
For 33 years. In 1978, when historians finally gained access to declassified Luftwaffe maintenance records from late
1944, they discovered something extraordinary. Something that recontextualized everything about Lerche.
1944 wasn't an accident. The maintenance logs were meticulous. When researchers examined the records for Lerche's beef,
109 aircraft on that December morning, they found anomalies. Maintenance that should have been performed but wasn't completely today.
Most tellingly, evidence that critical engine components had been deliberately compromised in ways that would cause failure at specific flight.
Duration. Lerche had sabotaged his own aircraft. This wasn't a capture. It was a calculated defection. And the Americans knew.
It from day one. Go back to that moment when Lerche landed behind American lines. His choice to glide toward enemy territory rather than attempting to reach German lines. His calm demeanor when American forces found him completely today.
His immediate willingness to talk during interrogation. His lack of any attempt to mislead or evade questions carefully made today.
Watson had suspected from the beginning. The extended interrogation wasn't just about extracting information. It was an evaluation period.
It can't be simple. Real human beings, like a Latin woman, are more complex.
Beyond simply providing intelligence about German aviation, think about what this means. Rewind through everything we've discussed with this understanding.
December 14th, 1944. Lerche flies a test mission, deliberately sabotages his aircraft, and glides to American lines completely.
Not because of engine failure, not because of random chance, but because he'd made a calculated decision that Germany was losing, that his future lay elsewhere, and that he possessed skills the Americans would value. Everything shifts. The story we thought, we understood becomes something more complex, more calculated, more coldly rational, and yet somehow more human. Lerche wasn't a victim
of circumstance who made the best of a bad situation. He was an agent of his own fate today.
He wanted to be when the dust settled.
Was that betrayal?
Absolutely. He'd sworn oaths to Germany completely today.
Who'd looked at the trajectories of nations and made a choice about which side would win and where completely.
If you were in Lerche's position, captured, your country losing, offered a chance to use your skills for former enemies.
Equally, absolutely. Germany was finished. The Third Reich would collapse within months. A test pilot in post-war Germany would have.
No career, No prospects, possibly no freedom. The Pentagon classified the truth about Lerche's defection for 33 years because it complicated comfortable narratives about World War II. The story of a captured German pilot who cooperated with Americans today
was one thing. The story of a German pilot who deliberately defected, who sabotaged his own aircraft to orchestrate capture,
who played a calculated game to secure his future. That was messier. After 5 years at Wright Field completely today,
Lerche returned to Germany in 1950. The country he left was not the country he'd known originally.
divided between East and West, occupied by foreign armies. But aviation was making a comeback, carefully controlled but growing.
Lerche found work as a test pilot and aviation consultant, eventually helping rebuild German aviation expertise over many decades.
He flew virtually every major aircraft developed in the post-war era, from both sides of the Iron Curtain today.
His career continued into the 1970s, spanning an era that saw aviation transform from propeller-driven fighters completely
to supersonic jets and beyond. Watson remained friends with Lerche until the German pilot's death in 1987.
In his later years, Watson reflected on what the Lerche experience had taught him.
Hans showed us that professional competence
and personal integrity transcend national boundaries, he wrote. Even in the middle of the most destructive war in human history.
When faced with the truth, which road will you take? You must decide.
With the United States Air Force weren't fully declassified until 1978, exactly 33 years after his capture. For more than 3 decades, one of the most extraordinary prisoner of war stories of World War II remained buried in military archives. So what do we make of Hans Werner Lerche? Was he a traitor or professional doing right?
The answer isn't simple. It can't be simple. Real human beings are more complex than categories we use to judge.
He betrayed Germany, no question, but he also acted rationally given circumstances, and he maintained professional ethics throughout his service.